Welcome to the PrevenTable. PrevenTable, we still haven't figured out what the heck we're calling it. It doesn't matter. But joining us again as a repeat guest, I feel like I should have a certificate or something for you, is Poli. And Poli is a woman who is very sassy and is a woman of Puerto Rican ancestry. Is that how you identify?
I am definitely Puerto Rican. I am what we call Afro-Boricua. So Borinquen is the indigenous name for Puerto Rico. And I am a biracial presenting woman, so I am Afro-Boricua.
Okay, wow. I will not say that. I took Spanish in school, but I could never roll my R's, and that's why I didn't really do that well in it. But so you are Puerto Rican presenting. No,
Well,
say it
yeah,
again.
I guess I do look very Puerto Rican, but if you look at my family, we have basically a rainbow of skin colors because being Puerto Rican does not necessarily equate to a skin color.
Correct.
Right?
Right.
It is about our culture,
The
our
culture.
language, and the food.
So you were a guest on a previous episode, and after sort of the mics stopped rolling, you brought up this topic of colorism. And I said to you, I know what I see on BuzzFeed, and I know what I see and read about. And I know enough to know that I don't know anything other than I recognize that I have privilege as a white woman. I recognize that colorism and shades of skin color is a very hot button issue because people who are seen as more white adjacent are given more privilege through society and just the way that the world is set up. And we were talking about some of the controversy that has been coming out since the In the Heights movie, which is based off of a Broadway play, correct?
Correct. And it is focused on a neighborhood in New York City that is Washington Heights that is predominantly occupied by our neighbors from the Dominican Republic, which have more descent from the African community. So
Their skin is darker.
Their skin is much darker. Their hair is different. And it was kind of sad for some of us not to see that representation because it would be more folks who look like me or my father because I am biracial presenting. But I want to go back to something you talk about privilege.
Please.
So I recognize that because I am biracial presenting, I can navigate different worlds. So I do have privilege. Also because I can talk my way, right, into or out of things because of access that I had to education. And also that as soon as I say, oh, I went to WashU, you should see people's faces, how they treat me differently. Because Sassy Pants has an accent. But I know a lot of things. I'm a master of nothing, but I know a little bit. And speaking of privilege too, as I was lost in the back, I was like, you know what? Like, I recognize that if I had been
you got lost in the parking lot
in the parking
on the way
lot.
here.
Yes,
right. Yes. Okay. So you recognized if you had been
of a darker skin color, I may have been a little bit in trouble because it happens, right? That people get stopped or people get treated a certain way, which I'm inserting my politics. It's very unfair.
Yeah. Well, I don't know that that's political, right? I mean, to talk at Prevent+Ed, I mean, we start talking with kindergartners about the importance of including others and tolerance. I mean, we don't name it as tolerance, not until the 5th grade, but we talk about including others, and no matter what. And that means no matter if they bring something to lunch that you think is weird, or if they like the monkey bars and you prefer jump roping, and then somewhere along like teenage years, like we forget that. We forget that it is not acceptable, never acceptable to treat somebody differently because of how they look on the outside. So I don't know that that's political. It has become political. But that in and of itself is not political. So were you taught about, and this is my own ignorance, okay, because again, I mean, you've accompanied me on my journey, Polly, and you have been one of the people who have helped me recognize the privilege I have, being able, you've helped me put words to it and put action behind it so that I'm not kind of stereotypical white fragility, feeling guilty about it and not knowing what to do. So you've helped me put words to it. But I didn't have these conversations growing up. So when you were a kid, were you aware that your skin color was maybe different than other kids, that it was maybe different from other people in your own family?
So it's a yes and no.
Mm-hmm.
So in my family, we came in different skin colors, but in my grandma's house, in my maternal, we were all treated the same. And I was the oldest grandchild, and my grandma did call me negrita, but in my family, that was an endearment.
Okay.
I didn't realize. So my dad would talk about racism, but I was never experiencing it. I didn't experience it till I came to St. Louis.
Oh.
But
this is my surprised face. For those of you at home, I'm not surprised.
So I noticed something was different when I went to prep school. So I went to one of the
that would be like high school?
High school. It was
okay.
9th grade. I went to one of the fanciest high schools in Puerto Rico. I know that I don't behave in that manner because I'm very Polly behaves the way Polly wants to behave. But I went to one of the fanciest prep schools, and I noticed that in my class there were about 4 of us who looked biracial or black presenting, and we were all on scholarships. And that's when I was like, this is interesting. And then I started noticing that the folks in power in Puerto Rico were more white adjacent. But when it really hit me and everything started changing was when I came to college. That people started asking, "What are you?"
Oh,
and I was
wow.
like, "What do you mean? I'm Puerto Rican." But they're like, "No. But what are you?" And I was like, "I don't understand what you mean."
What answer did they want? Like, what kind of answer do you want when you ask a question?
The term biracial, which we don't use in Puerto Rico, like
right,
really.
Right.
In Puerto Rico, is more actually where you go to high school. That's a question that you get asked so that they can place you.
They can figure out
socioeconomically too. So St. Louis thinks they're special with that, but no. Then I started getting followed in stores here. That didn't happen at home.
Wow.
Then when it really started hitting me was when I started working in clinics. And I would hear the stories.
Because you are a social worker.
I am a clinical social worker, and for about 8 years I worked in never hospitals, but clinics.
Clinics, okay.
And my patients started telling me stories about their encounters with law enforcement. Some of my patients were law enforcement folks, like correctional officers, and they were corroborating some of those stories. And certain municipality would like to come to our parking lot, scan our license plates. So I started getting that kind of like all the stories, things that were happening in the clinic, started kind of hitting home, me getting followed in stores. I have issues driving through certain streets here. I feel safe when I'm in the city. I'm just going to be honest that I was working in the county, in a small municipality, and as soon as I hit the city division, like division between city and county, that's when I felt safe, and I was concerned.
It's like you could exhale.
Yes, and I was more concerned about law enforcement than citizens. And it wasn't until I developed relationships with certain law enforcement who I love, like some of the officers that I work with in my work, but still even them share quite a bit about what's happening, and they sometimes don't have the platform or they don't feel safe speaking about.
And your husband is a white guy.
He is a white dude.
And I mean, I'm sure that was you were aware, right? Like you're aware, and I'm sure he was aware. So were there kind of conversations about, if we're going to do this, right? If we're going to date and if we're going to get married, like we're going to have these perceptions of us, we're going to have to, I mean, this is a commitment. Did you all have those kind of conversations?
So he leans very left. So like with him, there's no issues. Like he is more left than Poli is.
Whoa. Whoa.
So it didn't. That was not necessarily a concern about. How do I say it? Yes, we have lots of conversation of what's happening in the nation, but he's understanding. Do I want him to speak up more publicly at times? Yes. You are not going to find him protesting at the front of the line.
Right.
No. Even though he's like super, super left, he's more of like, he's an extrovert among his friends, but not necessarily in public.
In public. Mm-hmm.
He does get loud. Like on Sunday, he was getting really loud talking about politics. That got me Ranchito, and I was like, "You're getting loud." And I he gets very excitable.
Got it. Especially things he cares about.
Yep.
And I would imagine that he could get worked up if he felt like there was something happening to you, about you, in front of you, involving you that was not okay.
Yes. But but you know, like it's I'm sure it has to be hard to be married to sassy pants. I mean, so I have signs outside our house, and like, so look, we have negotiations about what signs I'm gonna put.
Mm-hmm. 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 So, what did Rita Moreno do wrong?
So I don't think so.
I don't know. I don't know anything
about these. So
I don't know anything other than she got in trouble.
Community, which is more than one community, right? It's not a homogeneous community, but there's a conversation about either or, and I don't think we can't have a conversation about In the Heights being binary. I think it's a conversation of, and we should celebrate that we have a show that talks about like the Latin community. And we need to address the issue of colorism, of not casting folks who actually represent the folks that live in Washington Heights.
Well, so what you just said is so spot on with what we talk about constantly on our team, which is it's not an either or. It's not you either teach life skills in kindergarten or you distribute Narcan and save lives. Like it is both.
And
it is not an either or, it is a both and the idea, that's why I love this idea of having conversations on a podcast, because you can actually talk about nuance. Like there are lots of depth, there's lots of well, maybe, or I'm not sure, or I hear you but I'm also wondering, and that gets lost. That gets really lost.
I am reading right now Finding Latinx, and it's really helping me also understand myself. I am on a journey. I am still figuring out who I am. I may be turning 40, but...
which, by the way, 40 is the new 20.
I hope so, except my body doesn't feel it.
Oh,
but
I know.
I do.
I know.
But I feel more confident.
Yep.
And...
more self-assured in your... Yes.
Mm-hmm. But definitely my body, the pinched nerves would disagree with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We also should talk sometime about like women's issues. Like I'm postmenopausal, right? Who knew? There are things that, right? And we don't talk. There's many things we don't talk about.
My friend just had a baby at age 40. They labeled it a geriatric pregnancy.
It is. After 35 is that geriatric.
She's like, I'm sorry, a geriatric pregnancy? Excuse
me?
So I'm like an old grandma because I'm above, prime reproductive years. Do you want to talk about a label? Whoa.
Why? And labels matter, right? Words matter.
Words matter.
But so I think
this book you're talking about.
Well, I was talking about Finding Latinx, but I think we all should be on a journey. We should never stop learning or challenging who we are and trying to figure out who we want to become. So Finding Latinx, it talks about the different Latinx communities throughout the U.S. It's written by Paola Ramos, whose father is a famous newscaster, and she's a consultant, or she appears often on CNN. But it's a great book. It's been really helping me define what I'm feeling and in a sense, like, who am I at the table, right? Because living in a city like St. Louis, I feel like sometimes my people get erased, right? And I'm constantly I'm with Nicole in a group, and we talk a lot about it. It's like we need who lives, right, and how does equity present in a certain issue, but yeah, I'm trying to figure out who Polly is and how does colorism affect me, how does racism affect me, or how can I be an ally in the community.
Well, I am thrilled that you rejoined our table and that you're thinking about how to show up, how you want to be and live in this soon to be 40-year-old body, because sometimes we think we're really old, but guess what, we got a lot of life to live. And so it is interesting though that around this age you really start to figure out who you are and who you want to be and what you stand for and what just you're kind of just going to let go. Pleasure having you today, and you are welcome back anytime. If you like this, if you like what you're listening to, if you're like, yay, more Poli, please subscribe to our podcast. Thank you so much, Poli.
Thank you.